I'm going to tell you a story about Hannah, a woman that lives about 10 minutes away from me here in Belfast. Hannah has very kindly allowed me to share a story about her life with you today. So the story begins when Hannah was 15 years old. It was the week before Christmas 2008, and she started to develop symptoms that were similar to a flu. But it wasn't a flu because a few days later she coughed up blood, and that night she was in a critical condition in intensive care. As a result of an autoimmune disease called vasculitis, her kidneys had started to fail, and her chances of survival were diminishing. When I spoke to Hannah's mother, Susan, about this time, I was shaken by what I heard. Her mum told me, and I'm going to read a few quotes for you here. Her life was touch and go. I never left her side. I didn't want to break down because she was being so stoic. As her hair fell out, I'd scoop it up so she wouldn't see, and I wished it were me instead. I prayed that she would live. Hannah spent the next year on dialysis. I didn't know this until I spoke with Susan, but a consequence of being on dialysis is that your diet is restricted. And with limited kidney function, you can drink only up to 500 millilitres of liquid a day. For reference, that's a glass of water of about this size. The average adult like you and like me, we drink about 6 times this amount of water per day. If Hannah drank any more than this one glass, her blood pressure would spike due to fluid retention, and she'd have a life-threatening seizure. So she was constantly thirsty. Put yourself in her shoes for a minute. Imagine what it would be like to not be able to quench your own thirst for fear of it being fatal. That is the life somebody waiting for a transplant lives every single day. Last year, 9 people died in Northern Ireland because organs were not available to save their lives. And right now, there are approximately 140 people waiting for life-saving transplants in hospital beds as close as 5 minutes from where I am standing right now. Some of them will get transplants, but what happens to those that don't? There are 2 legislative systems of organ donation, the opt-in and the opt-out. The mutual feature of these 2 systems is that you get to decide whether you want to donate or not. No matter what system is in place, your choice is not taken away. Now, the difference between these systems is the default. In the opt-in, you are not considered an organ donor unless you've specifically opted in by signing the NHS registry. Now, in the opt-out, you are considered an organ donor unless you've specifically opted out by signing the NHS registry. The opt-out system is used in Wales and England, and as of later this year in Scotland too. There was a consultation on in January of 2021 in Northern Ireland with the objective of changing the legislation here from the opt-in to the opt-out. And I'm going to tell you why that could be the right move for Northern Ireland. So, the objective of changing the legislation is to save lives, and we can do that by increasing the amount of organs being donated. Research tells us that, simply put, changing the legislative system from the opt-in to the opt-out can significantly increase donation rates. One reason for this is donation culture. People in opt-out countries are 17 to 29% more willing to donate organs than people in opt-in. It's because, as Granica English of the British Medical Association says, donation is seen as the norm rather than the exception. British individuals living in Spain, the country with the highest donation rates per year, are 4 times more willing to donate organs when living in Spain than they are when living in England. Why? Donation is seen as the norm in Spanish culture, and with only 47% of Northern Irish individuals on the NHS registry, donation being the exception, is still very much part of our culture. Changing the legislation could change this perspective. Now, another reason that changing the legislation could increase donation rates is due to family consent rates. In either the opt-in or the soft opt-out system, the family of the person who has died will always be asked to consent before donation can take place. In the hard opt-out system, they're not consulted at all. The soft opt-out system is the legislative system under discussion for Northern Ireland. So you might wonder, if the family essentially get the final say, why does it actually matter what system is in place? Well, when the family of the person who has died don't know if they wanted to donate or not, the default influences their choice, and it's primarily down to the language used in the donation consultation. In the opt-out system, the family can be asked by the transplant team if they can proceed with donation as their loved one is a registered donor, now, albeit by default. In Wales, 2 years after changing the legislation, families were almost 3 times more likely to consent when asked like this than families in England that were using the opt-in system at the time. In the opt-in system, the family can be asked by the transplant team if they can proceed with donation despite their loved one not being registered as a donor. Changing the legislation means that we can optimise the language used in the donation consultation. Lastly, be in support of legislative change, because every discussion on this topic is an opportunity to inspire change on an individual level. It's a platform for raising awareness, a medium to share harrowing stories, and an opportunity to educate on the steps needed to becoming an organ donor. Yes, we need to change our legislative system, but we need to not get lost in debate, and we always need to remember this message on the forefront of our discussions. Organ donation is a gift of life. You're giving life to somebody else. I mean, I can't think of a gift that's greater than that. Every donor has the potential to save up to 9 lives and significantly improve 50 others. Becoming a donor means that you could do this too. I said earlier on in my speech that in the soft opt-out system, your family or your loved one will always be asked to consent prior to donation taking place. So if you take one message from this speech today, I really hope it is this. Tell them you want to donate. Have the chat. 2 years after Hannah first became critically ill, she received a life-changing kidney transplant. Despite missing years of school, she sat her A-levels with her friends and she got amazing results. She got 2 A's and a B. Then she went on to travel the world, living life to the full. She even won a gold medal at the UK British Transplant Games for her athletic achievements. Hannah became a primary school teacher and later she did specialist training to work with kids with special needs. Currently, she works with children with severe levels of autism. Hannah put so much good into this world, a world that without organ donors wouldn't have her in it. Encourage legislative change, be a donor and have the chat. Thank you.